The name's Moss, and in all games you have certain moments where you just can't quite figure something out. You'll stay stuck on it for an unreasonable amount of time. Try almost everything to the point you'll go insane, and then it'll click. And once it does, there's a feeling of relief, clarity, and of course how did I not think of this earlier? And it was so simple. We call these moments blunders, and they happen to the best of us. And they've happened enough to me in the Banjo-Kazooie series to make a top 10 list out of them. I'm sure we all remember beating Grunty for the first time in Banjo-Kazooie and being absolutely fascinated by Mumbo's moving pictures showing us the secret locations of certain missed items. Whether it was the blatantly obvious ones like the ice key in Waz's cave, or even the more subtle ones like the Shark Food Island or the sealed wine barrel in the Mad Monster Mansion's cellar. Either way, I'm sure it drove you absolutely mad trying to figure out just how to get these mysterious stop and swap items that had something to do with the sequel Banjo-Tooie. So I spent countless hours screwing around in these areas just to get something to move or unlock, just trying to figure it out the old-fashioned way. Little did I know that it was supposed to be bonus content that we weren't even capable of accessing yet. And unless you were willing to wait until it was remastered for the Xbox, the only way you were really going to get there was via ridiculously long and intricate rhyming cheat codes that you would have no way of knowing about without the use of the internet. But wait, why is that such a big deal, Mobbus? Just Google it. And you're right, I could have done that. But first remember, this game was originally released in 1998, and the internet was still brand new. So much so that it wasn't even a common thing to just Google every problem, let alone exist in every home. Especially out in the country where I lived, where we were technologically about a decade behind everybody else. So when the option finally came to just Google it, you had to endure this monstrosity. And sacrifice an entire afternoon just to load one webpage. But you bet your ass that's what I did anyway. I wanted those secret stop and swap items, and boy was it ever cool to finally get the ability to do it. Even if the prizes didn't really do anything anyway. I'm sure we're all aware of the giant octopuses flailing around in the depths of Atlantis, making it incredibly difficult to get by. Because I sure do. Before warping all the pads, it is a requirement to get past them in order to discover the newer areas. But this is where I ran into problems. You see, I was well aware of the ability to freeze them, with the sonar blast from the submarine that is, and I had no problem doing that. And to be 110% honest, I found the sub far more practical at swimming than the bear and bird anyway. So that is how I did most of my underwater traversing. But for the select few instances where I either haven't gotten to Atlantis yet, or I just so happened to stumble across one as Banjo and Kazooie, I used to just full send it straight into the flailing squid and hope for the best. And you'd be surprised how often that would actually work and I wouldn't even take a hit. But if I ever did, it was a disaster trying to recover. But the most irritating thing about this blunder was the fact that I actually had the right idea the first time approaching the octopus. Shoot an ice egg into him and freeze him. Now maybe I just missed his eye or didn't know to be that precise, but either way I just gave up on that method the first time it didn't work for me. Only to find my brother do it years later and have it work flawlessly for him. Such a piss off. Okay, this one is kind of a small one, or at least it should have been. Most of my time in my younger days when I was touring the frozen glacier of Hellfire Peaks as the giant snowball and wanted to change back into the bear and bird, I would come back to Wumba's tent and encounter a slight problem. Upon approaching the wigwam, I rolled through a lot of snow, growing my size so I could not fit through the door. Now at the time I did whatever I could not to take damage. Even if I had lots of honeycombs, I didn't like not being full health. So the thought of damaging myself with the conveniently placed campfire right next to the teepee never really occurred to me. I would always just save and quit. then restart the game to end up as Banjo and Kazooie in Jinjo Village, and just return to Hailfire Peaks and continue what I was doing. It wasn't until several years and multiple playthroughs later that I discovered that the campfire outside Wumba's tent was not just decorative to keep warm, but a means to re-enter the wigwam as a smaller snowball.
What the fuck am I doing?
I felt like an idiot. Okay, so maybe I didn't really learn from my octopus scenario that well, because in Banjo-Kazooie, when I got to the Whipcrack Tunnel in Grunty's lair right before Click Clock Wood, I never really knew about the orange dingpot. So every time I returned to Click Clock Wood, I would go through the Whipcrack Tunnel, burning most of my supplies in doing so. Gold feathers was the easiest method, but they're usually out. Blue eggs were also efficient, but sometimes I was out of those too, because I returned to that tunnel so often. So once again, just like the octopus, I would full send straight through and hope my matrix bullet time skills would get me through to the other side. But like most of my blunders, after a lengthy and somewhat embarrassing amount of time coming back to this room, I finally found that tunnel that disappeared into the long grass leading down to the orange dingpot. But this time I wasn't upset at my blunder. I was relieved not to have to go through that dreaded Whipcrack tunnel anymore. Also pretty excited too. That hidden room is quite badass. For the most part, unlocking different areas in Isle Hags was pretty easy. Chase and beat Klungo in the cave for Jinjo Village. Talk to King Jingling for Wooded Hollow. Use Grip Grab to shimmy into Plateau. And even though I didn't really know how to use the swap clouds effectively when splitting up, I still managed to open the door to Clifftop by going in one at a time to press the buttons and returning to the split up pads to switch from Banjo to Kazooie. But one of the places that had me stumped for way longer than it should have was the path from Wasteland to Quagmire. One look at the vertical climb 3 stories up that the Hag 1 digger track scaled, and you obviously think, yep, that's a Springy Step Shoes thing. And that's exactly what I did. But being the idiot that I was, I walked up to the wall, didn't notice that just to the right was a fairly large indent in the trees containing said Springy Step Shoes in plain sight with nothing else. Only to turn around and be perplexed as to how I'll get way up there. Only to think, maybe there's a flying pad laying around here. I don't know how long it took me before I finally found the purple bouncing footwear, but I do know that I wasn't able to reach Grunty Industries until after I visited Cloud Cuckoo Land, making Grunty Industries the last world that I found. And to make matters even worse, once I did find the Springy Step Shoes, I got stuck on the wall on the jump up, and didn't jump from the higher ground, making me just short of the ledge, and think, maybe there's another way up. Sometimes, man, I'm here, but I'm not all there. Rusty Bucket Bay. We all know how difficult that level can be, especially the way the music notes worked on the N64, as a record amount that you had to beat in a one playthrough, one life attempt, which I eventually mastered in a routine starting in the engine room and working my way from the insides of the ship to the outside, and then eventually in the surrounding the docks afterwards. Doing the most difficult areas right away with a low music note count, so if I died, it wasn't a big deal and I could just restart again and only lose like 9 notes that I had at the time. Except for the fact that when I finished the level, or so I thought because I visited every area, I still had like 11 music notes missing, and could not, for the life of me, figure out where they were. Like I said, I was sure I canvassed every inch of that map. Yet here I was 11 music notes short, and it stayed like that for months, until one day I was running on the starboard side of the rusty bucket and noticed that there were 2 windows, each with different textures. Now that was strange, and with a quick beak attack, I gained access to the captain's quarters. And wouldn't you know it, these windows appeared 2 more times throughout the ship, enough to get me those 11 music notes I was missing this whole time. It doesn't seem like much, but when that last music note door to double your health requires 882 out of the 900 notes, those last missing 11 hurt pretty bad. Glitter Gulch Mine is all about digging for gold. There's even a more specialized move that Banjo and Kazooie learn from Jam Jars that improves the butt slam that you already know, basically making it obsolete. And this new move specializes in drilling into rocks to find prizes. Very Glitter Gulch mine if I do say so myself. But there's one boulder in particular that is immune to the bill drill, and naturally, it contains a Jiggy. And it's not shy about it either. In fact, it's literally painted on the side of the rock, taunting you. Now, it's not rocket surgery trying to figure out what you're supposed to do with this boulder. It sits outside of a shack next to a mumbo pad. Inside of said shack contains massive grinders, compactors, and conveyor belts. And if that wasn't throwing the answer straight in your face, the warp pad right next to it called it the crushing shed. Now simply do the obvious. Get Mumbo to levitate the boulder into the shed, and then press the extremely obvious red button inside to start up the conveyor belt and grinder and retrieve the Jiggy pieces afterwards. Sounds easy, right? Well, not for this guy. Banjo-Tooie trains you to hit buttons on the sides of walls with grenade eggs. They make a big boom and are usually enough to get the job done without question. But this red button didn't budge. It didn't move with the roll and was too short for the standing or even the jumping rat-a-tat-rap. In fact, the only way to successfully press it is with the beak barge attack. But it's a move used so rarely in either game, as far as I was concerned, it didn't even exist. Or I just completely forgot about it. Which brought me to the conclusion that this extremely obvious red button was decoration, and there was another way to get inside the Jiggy boulder. Only I couldn't figure out what else to do for the longest time. Now, I'm not sure what made me try out the ZB beak barge, whether it was by accident when trying to do a high jump, or from Bottles and Spiral Mountain in the first game teaching me how to smash boulders. Either way, as soon as I did the move, it hit me like a truck. I went straight to the Glitter Gulch mine, fired up the crushing shed, and collected my sweet, sweet Jiggy chunks. And you know what? I never forgot about that move again. I even use it regularly against stronger enemies too, because it packs a meaty punch. Now this one is literally just a repeat of the Jiggy Boulder incident, only it involves the cheat code sandcastle in Treasure Trove Cove. Now I had cheat codes to enter, and I knew where to do it, but unfortunately the sandcastle where you enter these said cheat codes is submerged in water and there's no way of using the Beak Buster move to hit those letters. If only there was a way to bail out the water.
This is a bucket.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
But this bucket leaky, like his name suggests, has a hole in him and needs to be patched up with an object so we can drain the water around the sandcastle, allowing you to enter in the cheat codes.
Dear God.
There's more.
Only I had no idea how to do this.
No.
And just like the Beak Barge in Glitter Gulch Mine, farting out eggs was not something that I ever thought I'd have a use for.
Dear God.
It was more of a comedy move for me than anything else.
There's more.
But once I figured out that it could be used to gently deposit eggs instead of shooting them only as weapons, I ended up solving a lot more unsettled problems that I had throughout the rest of the game. You know, it's actually pretty handy. Now, as you've seen, I make a lot of stupid mistakes where I just don't know how to solve obvious problems. Sometimes it's easy to overlook things and end up thinking about problems way too hard. But then every once in a while, like I've said earlier with the ice eggs and the octopuses in number 9, you guess right the first time, but for some reason it just doesn't work. So you discount that solution entirely, even though it was correct. This is extremely frustrating because not only could this problem have been avoided altogether, but quite frankly, it should have been avoided altogether. After all, you did do the correct thing. It only gets even more frustrating when you miss out on half the game because of it. For me, this happened with the Talon Torpedo and the Kazooie Boulder in Pine Grove. Yes, the one that leads to Wasteland and Quagmire, containing 3 worlds, the final boss, and 8 new moves to be learned from Jam Jars, including the crucial springy step shoes and claw climber boots that I've already seen scattered around in numerous places. Now the good news was that in the demo plays when you boot up the game, you see Banjo and Kazooie use the claw climber boots in what looks to be an ice world. So I knew that I just had to get there. And luckily, it's on my side of the Kazooie boulder. But it needed like 36 Jiggies to unlock it, and I was a few short. This made me have to resort to extreme and unconventional methods to get jiggies that should have been easier with the proper method. Like the jiggy in Smuggler's Cavern, where you're supposed to use the move Glide. I used the running shoes from Captain Blubber's shop, timed my jump perfect so that the runners would expire just after I jumped, allowing me to use the wing whack for distance, and then fluttered to land just barely in order to capture the jiggy on top of the rock formation. All of this to scrape by with just enough jiggies to unlock Hailfire Peaks, only to find out that that's not even where you learn the Claw Climber boots. And you use them lots in this world too. It took what seemed like several months, but I eventually did figure out how to use the Talon Torpedo correctly. Apparently being right against the boulder when activating it doesn't work. Go figure. You need to take a bit of a run at it first. It was a long time, but my god was it ever the most exciting thing to come out of the cave on the other side and see the world wasteland written on the bottom of the screen. The payoff was huge, and definitely something to remember. Speaking of areas that I couldn't find for the longest time, there's one that I struggled with for but as much as I looked everywhere for Wasteland and Quagmire, no place in Banjo-Tooie was more sought after by me than the mythical ice train station in Hailfire Peaks. I couldn't figure out for the life of me how to cool Chuffy's engine. I tried shooting ice eggs into the boiler, even farting ice eggs into the smokestack right in front of Gobby as he watched me, probably in confusion. I just couldn't figure it out. Keep in mind, I played Banjo-Tooie before Banjo-Kazooie, so I overlooked the smug camel. For a while, anyway. Until I tried to get him to do something useful, like puke his water into the smokestack. But because I played Banjo-Tooie before Banjo-Kazooie, I overlooked the Beak Buster move for the more advanced Bill Drill. And rightfully so, seeing as how most buttons in the game will press under Banjo's weight alone. So a butt slam isn't required. So I drilled away at his hump, fired grenade eggs at it, every attack known to man, except one. The one I needed. So the ice train station remained undiscovered. This went on for what seemed like 4 and it would just taunt me on the other side of the indestructible ice wall. Even the ability to open the train station doors with a snowball just to show me that this place actually existed and was indeed real. I even had dreams at night where I'd got into the train station through a crack in the wall somewhere, but woke up only to find out that that wasn't actually the case. The crack in the wall didn't exist, and I still wasn't in the ice train station. It got to the point where I was so mad that one day I just started to take out my anger on Gobby the camel. As is tradition in these games apparently, I hit him with every attack I could. Farting eggs, beak barge attack that I learned from the Jiggy crushing shed, grenade eggs because fuck Gobby, the Bill Drill where I didn't hold Z button down long enough by accident, boom! He puked water all over the smokestack cooling the boiler. Old King Cole confirmed that I was ready for the ice train station. I jumped over the train, climbed inside, selected the ice train station. The train started to move. The next thing I know, it was pulling me into the mythical ice train station, and I couldn't believe it. I toured around there for minutes, just taking it all in. I'd finally arrived, and was it ever cool. This has been Models, and we've all had our fair share of blunders, and some have even stumped us more than others. But no matter how much of a struggle or pain in the ass it was, we still managed to get around it and achieve that elusive goal. Even if it was blindingly obvious the whole time. Just make sure you take a mental note for the future. So in the meantime and in between time, stay tuned for more.